The video I've put on my main channel may help you place yourself in some of this story. It's not intended to say anything specific, but just to offer some background or pattern or something along those lines. I've loved volcanoes for many years, or I should say perhaps extremes of nature, the power of nature. I have visited a volcano before, or caldera, which I won't go into the difference between the two. So whilst I didn't actively choose to go to the Aeolians because I had no idea where I wanted to go, my daughter actually stumbled upon it, it was a good place for me because of that. But I've never been on a holiday where I've been to several different places either, and on reflection realised that it kind of almost mimicked my life for the past couple of years, though maybe in a rather nicer way, because I have been, slung about from one place to another. I didn't realise that until I was away, and it somehow felt quite healing. It felt like drawing a line between the end of one phase of life and another. I've been in a sort of transition practically for a while now, and will continue to be so for a bit, but I'm at the end of taking apart, and I'm now starting to put back together. So this was a reward in a way for the very difficult time that we've had, and I was quite ambiguous about going. I'd had enough change, but it transpired that it was very cathartic. It had been sort of put together for us by somebody in a particular order, and the islands are surprisingly different considering their close connection to one another. The fact that they're teeny weeny islands within a relatively short boat ride of one another, and yet they each have a very different character. And the way it had been set up was a kind of winding down almost, sort of starting off with somewhere relatively busy and ending up with something which was virtually horizontal. It was strange going to Stromboli because I was anticipating a field similar to the other volcano I went to, and it felt quite different. It was odd because the volcano itself, which it puffs away to itself pretty constant. It varies, obviously. Sometimes it's quite spectacular and other times it just puffs away. And you can see at night, there's actually a tiny little picture on one of on the other video of it at night. You can see it better at night what it's actually doing, because like fireworks, it's more noticeable. But the volcano itself felt nice, quite calm is the wrong word, but it didn't feel threatening in any way. But the atmosphere on the island was very peculiar. The people, it was from the people, there was an odd edginess. I suppose it's quite natural when you're, because there are quite a few people live on this island, and they are not on red alert, far from it. It doesn't threaten them very often, but it must be odd to have that possibility. It's not somewhere that you would necessarily choose to live. So there was this whole combination in a way of the practical and the physical and the emotional and the spiritual coming together on this trip, the symbolism of all that went on. But something quite interesting happened when we went to the last island, which was Salina. I said you'll see that. I've actually made the video in the order we visited it. And when we got there, we were offered a massage. The woman who did the massages had been doing it for many years, and there was this kind of little massage hut, actually not that far from our room. And you could have various kinds of massage, and because I'd hurt myself, as some of you know, not that long ago, I chose the Ayurvedic one, is that how you pronounce it? Which is very much about the body and the spirit being one, not as separate entities, a sort of reflection of one another in a way, and it's sort of intended, and a massage is intended to draw these closer together, to bring the two into focus. And she was absolutely fantastic. She really knew what she was doing. She was very, very good and very thoughtful as well. I mean, I'd had to tell her about my injury, and she managed to avoid it very well, whilst also sort of doing what needed to be done. And it was interesting because she spotted me the next day and asked if I was all right. And I think, there is definitely an element of a healing crisis when you have something like this. I have been through such a lot emotionally and physically, and there's a reaction to a release of the tension caused by that. In fact, my daughter had one as well, and we were awful with each other the following day. We kind of tore into each other. It was very uncomfortable, but I was aware that was probably why. But something interesting happened the day we had the massage, or the night that we had after we had it. It had been incredibly humid there for the week before, from the time we got onto the island, really. Far more humid, it transpired, than they were used to at all. There was normally a breeze, quite a stiff breeze, apparently, and there was nothing. It was like the tropics. It was incredible. So I suppose it wasn't surprising that a thunderstorm would come, and we'd had a quite odd evening, one of those evenings when everything goes a bit wrong. Nothing major, but just all sorts of silly errors and things taking place that shouldn't. The sunsets that you see on the video on my main channel are actually the build-up to that thunderstorm. It was just before that night, and the clouds were very peculiar. So my daughter and I were sitting watching the storm off in the distance over the sea. It was quite spectacular. I mean, I don't know if any of you have seen continental storms, but they are extraordinary. So we were sitting out on our balcony, our terrace, watching it, enjoying it. It was a wonderful floor show, really. And then the phone started ringing. Now, we were in a row of a number of rooms, and ours was the only one that rang, and I kept going to answer it, and there was just the dialing tone, no one there. It was obviously the thunderstorm phoning us, and I say that, to interpret that as you will. The following day they had to have a phone engineer up because it had wreaked all sorts of chaos with the phone lines. And then the heavens opened. We had to go inside because the rain was getting in. It was, again, tropical, battering down. And we had shutters which we could close. So we closed these shutters and went in. And my daughter decided that she wanted to have a look at what was going on. And the nanosecond that she opened the door, this extraordinary crack and this lightning. She said she opened the door and all she could see was blue. And all the lights went out. It had obviously struck the power supply. They had a power supply for the place. And so there was the crack, the blue, and then darkness that we were plunged into. So there was an interesting symbolism somehow in all that. It felt like a mirror of some description. And I think that life often mirrors our internal landscape. And sometimes you need the storm to break so that you can move on.